Listen, laugh, and learn.
You have to drill that target audience.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Until they are consuming your product, not because they love it, but because they can't escape.
We're all business.
Drill, baby, no more pussyfooting around.
Except when we're not.
I can see Russia from my house. I love old Sarah Palin. Hey, this is Tim Bennett here on the Focus Group with my good friend and co-host John Nash, where we always take an entertaining look at the world of business. But I'm also told, because we paid for it, that we're all business except when we're not. John likes that new moniker.
That tagline.
It's be sure to find us. We're formerly, for those of you who know, we were formerly on Sirius XM Radio. Now we're available on all platforms. And if you go to focusgroupradio.com, you can find them, whether it's SoundCloud or iTunes, and we have a couple of new ones we'll be mentioning soon. You can select the platform there. Also, our YouTube channel, which is Focus Group Radio, and Focus Group Radio is our handle for all of our social media as well, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. We also have a phone number if you'd like to give us a call and give some, thoughts about the show or ask us questions, and we'll answer them at the end of the show. It's 914-FOCUS-GR. It's 914-362-8747 or 914-FOCUS-GR. John likes to make the grr sound. But the GR is for group, Focus Group Radio, right?
Yeah.
So you could call there and leave us a message. So how was your week, Mr. Nash?
Good week. The dog days of summer. We're into the end of summer, which is amazing to me.
I can't believe it.
And the thing that I'm also puzzling over is why haven't I seen more movies? I haven't been interested in a lot of them.
Did you see the AbFab movie yet?
No.
I was going to go when it opened a month ago, or 3-4 weeks ago, whenever it was, and I have. Are you going to see it in the theater?
Definitely want to see it. Here's someone
in a theater, or
I'd like to see it
home?
in a theater. And here was a friend's review of the movie. Better than the Sex and the City movie, the first one. That's a kind of a weird thing because the first one was okay.
I'm not sure AbFab. I love this series.
Yeah.
But I sound like an old crow when you say, well, I like the early series. Because I think the original ones that were done, the first 6 and then the 6 or 10 that were done, I thought when they tried to reboot it in the early 2000s, it wasn't as good.
No, it wasn't. And in fact, I would say that you could encapsulate the experience for AbFab to those first 3 seasons, the original ones. But, funny about the TV thing, I had 2 things I was going to recommend to you. First, I don't know if you're following a show called Mr. Robot. It was a USA Network.
Robot?
Well, yeah, I knew you were going to go there. I didn't know right away that you're going to go make that face like, uh-oh, here we go.
Robot.
It is a show. How do I want to describe this?
Is this the one with the guy that's a robot and they don't know?
No, he's a hacker, and he's a computer programmer, and also he's an expert hacker. And it's this interesting kind of show that I'm getting into. It's season 1. They're already getting ready for season 2, or if it's not playing already. I'm watching it on Amazon Prime, much like you would watch.
What network
Netflix.
is it on?
It's on USA Network.
Okay.
And I'm watching it like you would watch a Netflix show, minus the commercials. It's almost cinematic. And Bob and I had started watching the show when it first premiered, but it was so interruptive with you had to fast forward. But when you watch it without any of the interruptions, it's really good.
See, Comcast isn't allowing me to push forward.
Not on demand. They hardwire on demand, so you can see the ads. And another show that I'm desperately interested in watching that got great reviews is a show called Strange Ways. And the people who made this show reference a lot of 80s horror movies. Now, you remember we were like 80s Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Poltergeist was not blood and gore. It was psychological thriller, and it built up the tension.
Like The Jagged Edge or The Shining.
That's exactly right. And they referenced a lot of that way of creating tension in the audience. So I'm really curious to watch that show. So
Mr. Robot used the old Styx song. Tomo arigato, Mr. Roboto, tomo tomo.
No, but the writer is a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick and of the movie Blade Runner. But I'll just put it out there that you might enjoy it.
Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot. Yeah.
Now, I did see something. A movie. I think it's going to be a movie.
Yeah.
One of your favorite books last year is coming out as a movie. Something about a record player. in the 80s.
Oh, Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Ernst Klein. Yeah. In fact, his second book was just abysmal. But Steven Spielberg got the rights, and if he's not directing it,
Did you see that it's coming out? I'll be curious.
it's all about video games, and it's Joust, Frogger. It's all woven in. The book is fun to read. It's a science fiction book, but it references all the games we played at the arcade when we were kids. You'd laugh out loud if you saw the names of the games. You'd be like, "Oh my God, I played that as a kid."
Well, I know you liked the book, and there was a couple of other people that I'd heard that said they liked the book. I'm not a science fiction guy,
Book's
but
good.
they said it was. It's like people who might read a book about a sport that they weren't necessarily interested in, but it was a good story and a good
So
book.
maybe my complaint about not seeing enough summer movies is not valid because I'm watching TV more, like some of these binge watching things, like a Mr. Robot or a Strange
Did you see
Ways.
Star Trek?
We did. We saw it on the opening day.
Of course you did. Did you get popcorn?
No.
How was it?
Hey,
I haven't heard much about it.
I'll say this. Bob usually reviews the movies for us.
Is Bob forced to go to these things, or does he like it?
Well, they did look at me funny when he came in like a mummy with a duct tape over his mouth and tied up to a lorry as a
I try to use Bob as my foil.
push cart. No, the movie ended and Bob sat there and he said, "I really liked it. I'd like to see it again. It was a fun Star Trek movie." So,
Wow.
as a review goes, I'd give
That's
that
pretty
a
good.
high praise. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Who's on our show today?
Okay, so besides our normal Week in History, Week in Science, which we educate people with it's our version of Schoolhouse Rock. A little
what it
12
is?
toes. I hope, yeah. And the Business Birthday, only show in the universe that does Business Birthday. And still to this day, I don't know where you find some of those. And
Business
I'm
birthdays?
good at search.
No, you're not.
Oh,
I don't think you are. There's a lot of things you say you're good at. Search is not one of them. I will say that. Unless it's something you're really interested in. Otherwise, you could care less. That's what your mother said. That's why you didn't do better in school. If you weren't interested in something, you just blew it off.
Yeah, I told Tim a story that my mom told me that, a teacher came to her, Ray Millar, right? But he goes, "Carol," and she was a teacher in our region, and he said, "Carol, John's doing terribly in biology." She said, "It's okay."
Not interested.
And he goes, "What do you mean? How could you not have him?" She goes, "He's not interested. When he's interested, he gets an A. When he's not, he gets a C."
And and you didn't get a National Honor Society, did you?
No.
You and I didn't do well in math.
I did well in geometry and algebra, but terrible in calculus.
What was the one we took together? Calculus, wasn't it, or something? Yeah, we barely
You
squeaked
and
by.
Who cares? Oh, so and we're going to be joined by Andrew Bolton, who is is he?
I'd like to say we're the
he's the
same
vi-
age, but
he's-
we're not. We went to the same college.
He's the VP of brand partnerships at a cool shop called Knotch, if I'm pronouncing
Knotch,
it.
yep.
Knotch. But Andrew's been on before, and one of the really cool things about Andrew is you guys are brothers.
Well, we went to the same college, and we both rode crew.
Oh, but he wasn't in your.
No, he was in a different fraternity,
Uh-oh.
which is okay.
Throwdown.
Yeah,
That's a throwdown.
it's okay.
Well, is it really okay?
Yeah. No, 'cause actually, it's okay because most of my friends are in that fraternity. The fraternity I chose, which I love, and I love the guys I was with. I'm going to tell you how I picked my fraternity. This is horrible. People will say.
didn't.
I picked it based upon how nice the house was.
Yeah. And when you walked in, they were playing.
I walked in and they were playing great 80s music. Everybody was dancing. It was the 80s. Everybody. So it was Olivia Newton's John, Let's Get Physical. I still remember this. I'd gone to all these other houses where it was like Animal House and they were throwing kegs out the window and fireworks in the hallway. And I walked into this place and it looked like a J. Crew catalog.
Let's
The
get
Preppy Handbook.
physical.
And
physical.
clean furniture, everything neat, pristine, smelled clean. I'm like, this is where I'm
Done.
going to live.
Done.
And they said, but you're a rower. Rowers don't live here. And I said, well, that's where I'm going to live. So
Here's the best part. You weren't out then. But you just described a gay man shopping
Oh
in
my
a frat
God.
house.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't out, but
Well, they did call Lambda Bi Alpha, and it was Lambda Chi Alpha, and there was an awful lot of. I found out later, an awful lot of men that might have dipped their toes in the pool.
so Andrew's going to be talking to us about his job, but
you
also
went way off on that.
But yeah, but also about what it means to be an athlete and to want to train for and it's topical since we're in the middle of the Olympics right now, what it means to try to train for an Olympic event or a team.
and have a
I
career.
assume it's a whole job. I assume that if you wanted to be the best in a sport, that's your job. But you have people can actually juggle it, and he's going to talk to us.
No, you
about
said it
that.
perfectly. With the Rio Games going on, Andrew was on the Olympic team that went to Beijing, and so we thought it'd be interesting to have him talk about, can you do both? Can you be a professional
Can you have a
business
career?
person, have a career, and also train for the Olympics. And then aside from talk about the other stuff, but I think he's a good chatter. So we'll have.
Yeah. And I love him too because he's also a cyclist. I'm not going to go down.
Had I known that, I'd have
road,
said no.
But I'm not going to.
Well, no, he started cycling because he hurt his back or something, didn't he? But we'll talk to him about that. So, what caught your eye this week?
Okay, this one I think you're going to have a lot of fun with. I found. Do you ever read BuzzFeed?
Yeah.
Okay, so BuzzFeed.
I always answer the little things
they do their polls and stuff. So BuzzFeed. This is a visual what caught your eye. This is all visual. So BuzzFeed did a thing called 18 people who probably wanted to crawl under a rock after accidentally texting their parents. So you're sending a text to someone, maybe the person's name is Michael or Mark, whatever, but mom comes up and you don't bother to check the name and you send the text. And the subhead for this article was, OMG, this effing dog just shit out our used condom from last night. Could you imagine your mom getting that text? So we have some graphics. I'll read them for our listeners.
So this is people who accidentally send something to
their
mom
mom
instead. So I think this is a problem with Apple. Because when I'm on that, what is that Apple Messenger thing? So you'll send me a note, iMessage.
Messages, yeah.
And I think I'm replying to you.
Oh, I've done this too.
A million times. And I'm petrified now to even answer anything because thankfully, I haven't done anything that.
Oh,
have you?
Almost hit the key and I'm like, whoa, you're not supposed to see that. Yeah, like email.
Is there a way to fix that?
I believe you can block or deny the contact to pop up. I'd use the old-fashioned method when email was first coming out. I double check who it's going to. And I know if I'm on the phone, I know who it's going to, but sometimes I don't. So, all right, so let's go through some of these graphics here. I forget what okay, yeah, so here's a text that someone's sending this accidentally to their mom. Thank you. And it's basically the woman who drunkenly texted her mom instead of her booty call. Thank you for the amazing night and blowing my back out. And then the mother responds, what?
They go running?
What's wrong with your back? Are you okay? I couldn't, this blowing my back out, I'm assuming means that her booty call gave her a great
massage.
Orgasm. And then to the right there is this girl who used the voice to text function while driving. So so mom says to her, are you on the way yet? And she replies, leaving now. Should be there around. Stay in your effing lane. So she's on the phone in the car, right? All right, let's go to the next pair here. What do we got? Is that the one oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Okay, so this is a girl who sends this. Where's that one? That's down here. Yes. The probably not okay text for mom to receive. So this just gets sent to a mother. He came inside me for the first time. That's okay, right? Could you imagine mom getting that?
Mother say that was okay.
And then what's this next one? What did I do here?
This is why you need paper. See, so John's trying to
they're
play.
Pictures. That's
well, you're doing
here it
on
is.
the iPad and
here. So this goes to him, and it says the daughter who accidentally sexted her mom. I just want to sit on your lap and make out. And the mom sends back this great note. You're not really my type, hun, but we should have a talk really soon.
See, I wonder how old she was.
I don't know. Let's go to our last ones here. And this is the one. So this was sent to, this totally chill parent. This is the totally chill parent you wish you had if you sent her a sext meant for your significant other. So this gets sent to the mother. Doggy style tonight? And the mother responds, I don't think that was meant for me, but have fun. Need me to babysit? And then this one, which I love, this text about emergency contraception. It's sent to the mother. I have the $45. Let's get plan B before my mom gets home. Mom responds, better hurry. I'm down the street. We'll talk when I get home. So there you go.
I think whenever you send any of that stuff, and it's tough because people now are so quick, tap, 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 tap. Yeah. And that's why the Apple thing bothers me. And I've even learned from you about the emails. If there's something sensitive that came in from somebody that's been forwarded, I will no longer respond. Nope. I'll start a new email.
Yep, because you never know if someone's on that chain and how that works. And yeah, it's just, we call that good hygiene.
Well, I made the
hygiene.
mistake. To this day, if I see the guy, I'm mortified. He was trying to sell an event to Subaru, and it was forwarded to me. And I replied, and the stupid idiot who sent it to me included him. So he was on the reply back. And I said, this moron's been trying to get in here for years. I went through the whole, I unleashed on the whole thing.
This moron's been trying to get through the door for years.
He's he's this, he's that, he knows this one, he's sucking this one's, I'm going on and on and on. And then I send, and then my phone comes up with his name on it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, he's calling. So I'm like, I'm not going to pick it up. And then I realized that he left the nastiest voicemail. I got this email, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like,
I hope he stopped calling on you guys.
He did, but I still see him now and then at social events, and I avoid him like the plague. We never were friends anyway, but you learn your lessons about replying.
We're never friends anyway. So what caught your eye?
I tried to find this. So Lay's, Lay's potato chips.
Indeed, yes.
So every year they come out now with all these new flavors. They have a contest. We tried to get them on the show. Maybe our sales guy Ed will be able to get them on. We'll see. He likes to ask the question. What I understand.
From our last show, Ed's telling us from our last week's show that we're terrible at this.
Right. So we're going to ask Ed. Ed, get Lay's on. Lay's potato chips. So Lay's potato chips came out with new flavors this year, and I stupidly, in trying to bring stuff to you, I left them at home.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to try them, but maybe another show. But what I wanted to show you was the packaging, and so this came from Reader. And they tested the 4 different types of chips, and they were concerned that the Chinese Szechuan chips were racist. And they said the bag was racist. So
what does it show? Pagoda.
So what Lay's has done is they've taken, so they've got Chinese Szechuan chicken.
I don't know what's worse.
Indian tikka masala, Brazilian picana, and Greek tzatziki. If I got it all right. So
and they look like they put it in. Is that Chinese food in a box in it?
Right. So they did. So there's a dragon.
Okay.
So a dragon. So this is one of the employees. If you're watching on YouTube, one of the employees very upset holding the bag.
That's an employee.
Yeah. It's got a dragon, and it's got a paper lantern, a pagoda, bamboo, and it says a Chinese takeout container that's opened up and shows the chips. Graphic artist Sue Kwong showed off the Chinese Szechuan chicken packaging, and that's Sue. So they felt that it was racist. I thought it was pushing it. They were upset. The Greek one has Pegasus on it. The Indian one has an elephant and Taj Mahal and different things.
Why did they put a panda on the Chinese one?
Well, I was going to ask. So the concern is that they don't think Lay's was being ethnically sensitive to their packaging, and they said the graphic designers needed to show more creativity. In the past, they've just shown the chips and the names. This year, they tried to be more graphic with the bags. And so if you see them at the stores, you look at them. I guess if I was Chinese, would I be offended by that? I suppose if they did a gay potato chip, I don't know what the flavor would be, margarita, and you did a rainbow and a pink triangle.
So far, none of those things are offending me.
No, but I'm trying to think if you could do a racial stereotype on a bag of something as a graphic artist. I mean, we could all go down that road. But
yeah, my brain just went down that rabbit hole, and it's bad. Because
Or what if you were going to do a Scottish chip?
A kilt, right?
Bagpipes, right? Bangers and mash.
We're terrible. We are such.
No, so I was wondering. So anyway,
for the gay one, it could be like a disco ball. Maybe it's like but that's all changed. If the generational, you could show Judy Garland having a chip.
Yeah. Well, so they were concerned about the packaging, and they made a complaint to. They made a complaint. They actually said for the chicken tikka masala that they did for the Indian food, they said that was actually invented in Scotland, according to legend.
Okay.
So they all tasted the chips. The one that they liked most was the Indian chip. They thought that was the best. I did try the Chinese Szechuan chicken chips. They were horrible.
Yeah.
They were atrocious. And so we could do a taste test of them, but the Brazilian picana, I'm probably saying it wrong, Picanha. They're supposed to taste like meat. And everybody said it's kind of tough to make the potato taste like meat. And they didn't think the flavoring was good.
Why fiddle with greatness? The potato chip is the potato chip. And in fact, did they still have Charles chips?
Yep.
Remember when the Charles chip man would come and you get the chips in the metal tin, and then the Viking man would come, we get our
Yeah, no, I love Charles. They still deliver in Pennsylvania.
They still deliver?
Yeah. So that bottom line was meaty chips were a poor idea. So they left all the chips out for all the employees to taste, and the big winner was the Indian tikka masala, followed by the Greek tzatziki, which was really like onion and dill, and then the Chinese chips and the Brazilian were the worst.
All right.
That's what they said. So that was what caught my eye. But I was wondering about the packaging thing, whether you felt that was...
Once I realized that the container, that there was a Chinese
takeout
I mean,
container?
that's pushing it. That's like, let's make the point even further, right? Paper dragon, okay. Pagoda, okay. Lantern, okay. Maybe those little shoes that they bind their feet in. Bind your feet. But yeah, one bridge too far.
The Great Wall. On today's...
Great Wall would have been perfect.
Great Wall, yeah.
Panda
Or there's
the
terracotta soldiers.
Yeah, the panda or the Great Wall. There you go.
Right. A lot of things you could have done. August 13th, today's National Left-Handers Day.
For the
Everyone's
president.
left-handed.
You're left-handed.
No, I'm not.
No, President Obama is?
Obama is. Bush number one was, I think. And I
yeah.
think Clinton might have been. Anyway, 8 presidents have been left-handed.
I think Clinton might have been.
Yeah.
Oh, and
That's Monica.
our VP of sales, his title's changed though, right? Isn't he like
President?
He's something bigger now, senior vice
Is
something.
he left-handed?
Yeah, he's left-handed. Yeah, that may be why. I don't know. Maybe
Left brain,
maybe
right
the
brain.
people at Lay's don't like left-handed people. You can't have the chip account. You're left-handed. Yeah.
They're talking about the difficulty lefties have with opening doors, writing in spiral notebooks, using a computer mouse.
Oh, I'm crying.
I remember as a kid, there was only one pair of left-handed scissors in our class, remember, for the lefties. The kids, poor kids,
I
had
do
to cut the
remember that.
paper.
Well, when we were at the cusp of that movement where they tried to re-educate kids to be right-handed. Our class, they didn't do that, but my mom tells me that right up until we were in primary
They smack
school-
your hand?
No, but they really did work to make you either comfortable using your right or,
That's very Russian.
Svetlana, the space
Svetlana.
woman, was probably left-handed, yeah.
In 1889, the patent for the coin-operated telephone was issued to Bill Gray, or William Gray, installed at a bank in Hartford, Connecticut. Apparently, young Bill's wife was very sick. The year was 1888. He wanted to use a telephone. He was running around town looking for a telephone. There were very few. He finally found one in a nearby factory and asked to use the phone. The manager said, no, they're not for public use. So he'd snapped in his head an idea of a public payphone.
See, and why didn't I think of it, right? Yeah.
Another thing you missed. Yeah. So he said that it clicked for the idea of a payphone. The first idea, though, was that it was going to be a box that had a covered-up mouthpiece, and you'd put a nickel in and take the box off, but kind of like a slot machine thing. And they said the problem was that they realized you could make unlimited calls once you got the box off. So that didn't fly. That was the first fail.
Wasn't a good ROI for the payphone.
And then there was one where they said that they were going to deposit money, but the problem was when the operator, so you'd get the operator, you'd pick up the receiver, the operator would say deposit money, and they couldn't hear that the money really went in.
Okay.
So he was in his workshop and dropped some coins out of his pocket and it hit a bell. And that was the idea of a bell. So he attached a little bell inside, so when the coins went in, it hit a little bell. And that's how the operator could hear that coins were actually put in. And that's how we got, I guess, Bell Telephone?
Yeah. Possibly. Yeah.
I don't know. How many payphones do you think were in New York City at the height?
In New York City, at the height of payphones, what if I said about 6,000?
125,000.
Holy, 120 what?
There were 3 million payphones in the U.S. into the mid to late 90s, making 27 million calls a day. Right now, there's only about 8,000 payphones left in New York City, and they just were talking about what New York is trying to do. So the issue is now it's not so much the phones, but the infrastructure is there with electricity, and with the thought is now, and you probably know this, to try to monetize by putting Wi-Fi in and charging for
They're all
Wi-Fi.
over the place. They're all over the place.
So
But they're doing free Wi-Fi here with those kiosks.
Well, they're going to start charging.
Okay.
So they said because it has electricity and internet inside these payphone booths now, they said a lot was going to be possible. They piloted this in New York, but you can still find one of the 8,000 payphones in Manhattan, and they're mostly used. Do you want to know what they're used for? 911.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 911 and 311.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. 1924, the very first country and western song sold 1 million copies. It was The Prisoner song by Vernon Dalhart. I played the song on my little computer because I've got so much music. And
we learned a week ago that you have 176 gigabytes of music.
and lo and
This was a
behold, this
minor.
song was on there, and you've heard it before. I don't know how to do. You're much more. I'm a Luddite. I don't know how to put it up on the screen.
I would say you search, but I was just told
audio.
a while ago that I'm not really.
You can't search.
Okay.
1931.
Filing it all away for
I
when
know,
the
it'll
teary
come right
phone
out.
call comes.
It'll-
Oh, I can't do this. I don't search either. We better get someone else to help us. Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Oh, I know how it works. 1931, the very first community hospital opened in Elk City, Oklahoma. I was surprised it was Elk City, but it was,
Community hospital.
yeah, it was innovative for its time in that it helped local farmers and residents get affordable care, which most of them were farmers or rural people. 1942, Henry Ford unveiled his soybean car, which is right up your alley. It was a plastic-bodied car that weighed 1,000 pounds less than a steel car.
Wow.
So Henry Ford experimented in the 40s with making plastic parts for automobiles. He said they were made out of soybeans and other materials such as wheat and hemp.
Okay.
And the big issue he claimed that the car could roll over and get crashed and not be dented. It was very strong, even though it was lighter than steel. And he was also looking for a way to combine industry with agriculture. And he said it was safer, and due to a shortage of metal at the time, he thought this was going to be the new way cars would be built. Of course, World War II interrupted everything, and car production stopped in the U.S., and then somebody in the style department decided to destroy Mr. Ford's soybean car, and they never had the formula on how to make the parts and the plastics, and so that was it, the end of the plastic car.
Totally, because someone decided to.
Well, they said they were trying to rebuild for the war effort, and so when it came back to ramp up production again, the plastic was off the table. 1967, Fleetwood Mac made their stage debut in Great Britain
I like
at the
Fleetwood.
Windsor Jazz and Blues Festival. 1985, Maria Shriver and Arnold Schwarzenegger were engaged. Look at the picture there with them. Look at him and her.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Look at him now.
Yeah. Where's the maid?
Things are tough. She's in the cake.
That's the one he yeah.
In 1994, it was reported that aspirin would not only help reduce heart disease, but also help prevent colon cancer. I never heard that about aspirin.
No, in fact, aspirin was on my list for Week in Science because this was the week it was invented or was patented for the first time.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, miracle drug, right?
Do you take an aspirin a day? You should.
No, that's actually school's out on that one too. It's kind of like the other day. Was it last week? They were talking about you don't have to floss anymore, and then 2 days later, like, no, you should still probably floss.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
What happened in science this week?
Continuing on our role of educating folks with irrelevant facts that they could use for their networking, though, right? Hey, you could network with the focus group. Use a.
It's good for Jeopardy, by the way.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I'm answering Jeopardy questions now much better. Yep.
Yeah, it's arcane is the word I would use, right? All right, so
I'm a Benelux country.
I think you'll appreciate this first one. For Saturday, August 13th, today, the birth of Felix Wankel, and he was the creator of the Wankel engine. Now,
I thought that was a watch.
I thought being an auto guy, I thought you would know that was
Wankel
right
engine?
away, the Wankel engine.
Is that a Mazda guy?
He was a German engineer who invented the first rotary internal combustion engine. So the Wankel engine doesn't use pistons. It uses a rounded triangle to minimize movement through the chamber, and that's what drives the engine.
Yeah, that's what Mazda uses, rotary.
It was a rotary engine, and Mazda was one of the first companies to use that. He received the first patent in 1929, but it wasn't until 1957 that the first truly functional Wankel rotary engine came off the assembly line. It has very few moving parts, lightweight and compact, and that's why some auto manufacturers prefer it because it can reduce the cost of producing a car. This next one.
What if that's where wanker came from?
You're a wanker? Yeah, I don't know.
Around.
I don't know.
Running in circles.
I'll search that. Oh, but I can't search. I'm bad at search. Okay.
Oh, we're gonna live this one for a while.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna beat that dead horse till it's in China.
Yeah, and I'll hear it
To the
again
ground.
and again and again.
All right, so August 18th is the death of American pioneering psychologist, B.F. Skinner. Now, if you're watching at home, the portrait of Skinner that I found is pretty consistent. People would always portray him or photograph him with that crazy white hair.
Looks like Trump's mother. Did you see her picture?
The mad scientist hair. And then to the right is a picture of the B.F. Skinner, a doll covered with pigeons, because he pioneered the field of behaviorism. And he had a famous thing called the Skinner box, and that it was kind of like the Pavlovian dog, so that he would put a pigeon in a box, and he'd watch the pigeon's behavior, if the pigeon was rewarded, or if the pigeon the beak had to hit a lever for a treat or something. So he pioneered this whole thing about behavior, which he extended further into human behavior. I just thought that, how could you deny that face in that picture? It's a weird kind of Bozo the Clown.
Pavlov's dog, Skinner's pigeons.
Skinner's pigeons, yeah. And then the last one for science was the invention of the daguerreotype. And the daguerreotype was one of the first forms of photography, of fixing an image to a plate. Now, I chose 4 daguerreotypes that are very famous because these were all photographed during the Civil War. So do you know who the people are?
Well, there's Lincoln.
Yeah.
And Douglas.
Frederick Douglass, yeah.
And
President of the Confederacy.
Oh, yeah, I should know. Lee, no. I don't know who he is. I forget. Jackson.
Jefferson Davis.
Jefferson Davis.
Yeah.
I should know that. I've wiped out the South in my mind.
Well, yeah. I can't even search for the South.
Jefferson.
And that's not even a handicap. It doesn't come up.
You know what? This search thing's going to get old real quick.
Under my skin. So the daguerreotype was invented by Louis Daguerre. The French government actually bought the rights to the process and then gave it to the world for free, which I thought was...
French did?
They took the pen, they said, okay, you can have it. But the process was also being worked on simultaneously in England and a few other countries. But I think the photographer who took that, was that famous Civil War Brady?
Oh, I don't know.
Those daguerreotypes were famous because there was a Civil War photographer who and by the way, when you had a picture taken back in the day, you had to sit still for almost 2 or 3 minutes to get the image fixed to the plate. So when you see Lincoln or something, he's literally motionless in that chair until the guy says, okay, I got it. It wasn't an instantaneous thing.
Can I have an itch or anything?
And then the picture's ruined.
You got to start again.
Picture's ruined, Tim. All right. So that was the...
Picture's ruined.
There you go.
Funny because you mentioned the rotary engine, because there's
Is it a business birthday?
2 of the business birthdays. And we're the only show in the universe that does business birthdays. 2 of them are auto related. One of them is Giovanni Agnelli, who was an Italian entrepreneur who founded Fiat Cars. And he was one of the founding members of Fabbrica Italiana di Automobili Torino. That's my Italian. Or Fix It Again, Tony. That's what everybody always said Fiat stood for.
I like Fix It Again, Tony, better.
He paid $400 for his shares in 1899, which were worth in today's dollars about $11,000.
That's it?
That's all he paid for his shares. Oh. And the first Fiat plant opened in 1900. They made
haven't
24
changed too
cars.
much from that little picture you're showing, huh?
No.
Still tiny.
So they're
European. You know, the streets are smaller.
Exactly. Well, we talked last week about how Fiat Chrysler is no longer making cars in the U.S. They're just doing Jeeps and Ram pickups. So it's interesting, but the Fiat company is so huge. Aside from Chrysler, they have Alfa Romeo, Dodge, Maserati, Jeep, Ferrari, Ram trucks, among other things. So it's his birthday today. Also, Assar, I think I'm saying it right, Gabrielson. Thorvald Nathaniel
Gabrielson. Is he Swedish?
A Swede.
Yeah.
And it's quite frankly a very boring story I'm not going to go into. But anyway, they thought we're going to make ball bearings and decided to make cars, and that's how Volvo came about.
Really?
One of the founders of Volvo.
Okay. But
owned by the
literally
Chinese now,
just
by the
like,
way.
okay, we're not going to do, what's that at 70 thing?
Oh, I don't know. It's a double typo. Don't you even make a face.
Coming from the computer of Tim Bennett. You know why the computer did that? It has no room. I can't move. I have 176 gigabytes of music on me. Help. Anyway.
What am I supposed to do with all that music? Until you come up with a solution, I don't want to hear it.
Oh, it's not my problem. I'd take that one to the UN General Council or something. Or the World Court. The World Court.
Final business birthday is Lee R. Raymond. He's 78 today, August 13th.
You don't shop here, Tim.
He's an American businessman, and he's a chief executive officer, or he was, of ExxonMobil from 99 to 2005.
And you don't like him.
Well, we don't either. He was at ExxonMobil which remained the last Fortune 500 company not to include gay employees in their anti-discrimination policy. He was also at the helm when Exxon took over Mobil and restricted Mobil and made Mobil rescind their pre-existing anti-discrimination policies. For 15 years, the board annually rejected the resolution brought forward by shareholders. 15 years. They rejected the resolution brought forward by shareholders to compel the company to implement a non-discrimination policy. He also, to put a cherry on the sundae, was one of the only 500 of the 500 top CEOs, Fortune 500, the only one that spoke out against the Kyoto Protocol, didn't believe or does not believe in the science behind global warming or climate change. He says that it's just the regulations and warnings just aren't there. So doesn't believe in climate change, doesn't believe in employee rights, lives in Texas.
Probably drinks out of a styrofoam cup.
Probably voting Trump.
Yeah, well, giving too.
Is my guess.
Good one, Tim.
So that's the business birthday today for Lee Raymond. Sometimes I wonder if we should recognize business birthdays of people that we don't necessarily care for.
I think that was important. I'm glad you did that because you're able to put on the record all the things that they're not doing and that they didn't do. I
guess if you're an oil company, you don't believe in climate change. You want to
or if you do, you're quietly paying people to not talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, that was good. I think you should continue that. By the way, it's the focus group with John Nash, myself, and Tim Bennett. We are going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to be welcoming Andrew Bolton to the show. He's the VP of Brand Partnerships at Knotch. I like that company name. It's like Knoll, Knotch, IKEA. It's one of those things. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Been in business a week. I got more money than I know what to do with.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
Herrera Rocher. He is doing well.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. This is Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host John Nash. Be sure to like us, subscribe to us, or rate us if you go to one of your platforms of choice that you're either listening or watching us on. All of our social media is branded focusgroupradio.com, so be sure to head over there and learn about the show during the week. We also, on Wednesdays now, if there's a special or some additional content, we'll be posting it also on Facebook. Is it flash? Do you like calling it flashback?
I want to come up with a different name because this week we didn't do one I kind of spaced on.
We had computer issues.
We had
issues.
You did. Well, when your computer starts going black screen bong, that's it, right?
I know. Well, you talked.
And I had one of them too.
You talked me an apple.
Yeah.
So joining us as promised, we have Andrew Bolton, who's Vice President of Brand Partnerships at Knotch. And in the spirit of transparency, Andrew and I both went to Marietta College, and I met Andrew when he was on the rowing team, and in common from Connecticut.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but we went to school in Ohio.
Our past is present in Connecticut.
New Englanders in Ohio.
New Englanders in Ohio. And aside from his professional career, Andrew spent I'm going to read this because I can't possibly remember it all. But he spent 5 years on the U.S. rowing team.
The official U.S. rowing team.
Right, the U.S. rowing team, winning a silver medal at the 2003 World Championships, a silver medal at the 2007 Pan Am Games, and a gold medal at the 2008 World Championships. And you were also an alternate on the 2008 Olympic team in Beijing. And so we're in the heart. It's August 13th. The Olympics now are in full thrust. John and I were talking, and I said, it'd be interesting. John remembered when you visited the studio before, and to talk about, the perception of what's going on in Rio from an actual Olympic athlete's perspective. And how difficult is it? I know you've got a pretty busy career in what you're doing, and you can tell us about Knotch in a little bit, but how you balance, or can you balance, being an Olympic athlete as well as having a real job and putting food on the table. So welcome to the Focus Group.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I was from that other fraternity that had the kegs and probably the parts that you didn't like.
John mentioned.
The Animal House part, not
the Delta Upsilon.
Yes, exactly. The Upsilon.
Delta Upsilon. I was Lambda Chi. Yeah.
So good times.
Yeah. So you were. So the Olympics. We talked a little bit before, and Brazil and Rio has been getting a kind of a ding about facilities and so forth. But you've actually rowed there before. What is it really like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, as you said, I was on the team for a long time, rode in a lot of different places. The Pan Am Games were actually in Rio in 2007, so it was kind of like one of their prep events as they were leading up into getting ready for the Olympics. And it's an interesting place. All of the things that you heard about recently about water quality and
Don't have more than 3 tablespoons if you're swimming. You're gonna have a bug.
Yes, exactly. Maybe it existed then, but no one ever really talked about it. It wasn't that big of a deal. I think the only piece of advice was, like, said, like, when you're showering, shower with your mouth closed, and don't brush your teeth with the water, which was a little bit disconcerting at times. But other than that, it was all right. It's a beautiful place.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did you feel safe?
No.
So that's held up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I personally felt safe because we had armed guards with us at all times. But before we went down there, the guy who runs security for the U.S. Olympic Committee does a big briefing for us and kind of make sure everyone's up to speed. And he used to work for the Secret Service, so a pretty legit guy. And he's got us in this conference room, and he's like, well, so this is usually when I get up and I say something about, like, don't be stupid, don't do stupid things because bad things will happen to you. But he's like, this time I really mean it. He's like, this is the scariest place that we've ever tried to do one of these events. They're like, don't wear your U.S. gear. It was actually kind of comical. Like, all of our training stuff all had, like,
USA.
No, it said USA in about font like this big. Meanwhile, like, the Jamaicans are just wearing, like, full flags, and it's, yellow and green and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, some guys on the Canadian team got shaken down by the cops on their way back from the beach. They're like, oh, we're going to stop you, search you for drugs, and then just took their money. My wife, girlfriend at the time, she had like $2,000 stolen out of her bank account because she had her ATM card skimmed at an HSBC.
I've never even met somebody who's had that happen. Yeah.
Another guy who was like 6'8" got held up at gunpoint. Which is kind of a ballsy move if you think about it. I mean, the guy's
6'8",
like a monster, rower, and held up at gunpoint. But that being said, like, everything went okay-ish, and I think things are going all right for the games now.
So how contrast that with China? So you were actually on the team in China. You walk in with the athletes and the whole deal. How much does the U.S. government? We always hear that the U.S. government doesn't necessarily support our teams that well. Do they? Or
Well, so it's interesting. So the U.S. government doesn't support the teams at all. So that's the answer to that. So the USOC is a completely separate entity, which is different than pretty much every other Olympic organization in the world, I believe, where the government has funding that goes to it. So the USOC is pretty much entirely privately funded through donors and through large sponsorships, through different corporations and whatnot.
So, when you to be an alternate on the team means you traveled with the team, you trained with the team.
Yep.
You basically could have stepped into the boat.
Yep.
Were you called upon to do that?
I was not. But I was there.
You're part of the team.
Ready to go. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of liken it to like the old saying of kind of like kissing your sister. Like, you'll do it, but you're not going to enjoy it that much. So yeah, it was definitely, I trained for, since I started rowing in high school, obviously not for the Olympics, but like, once I started getting into the national team and stuff, probably like 6 or 7 years to kind of get to that point. And so, it's a very small group of people that get selected to actually compete, and to be even just in the top 6 out of, the 20 or 30 people that were trying was definitely, cool and awesome. But obviously you want to go there and you want to compete. But I got lots of other places times to compete, which was good as well.
how do you? Why do you think you did well? Why? What separates someone who wants to be
That's a great
somebody
one.
who rowed and did well in college, or was a great golfer in college, or played tennis or whatever, and you say I want to go to that next level to be an Olympian? Is it a whole different level of mindset, or because I think a lot of it is which we wanted to go down toward about the financial issue of what it costs to actually do something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. For me personally, I didn't actually become good at rowing until I was at Marietta in college. Like, I rowed in high school, but actually was really bad. I wasn't that good, and just kind of ended up rowing in college as a fluke. And I was lucky enough that the freshman class that came in along with me was really, really competitive and really, really good. And so it was kind of like spark that internal fire of like competition and always trying to one up the people that you're training with. So I think that was like that initial spark of like all of a sudden like, oh, like yeah, I could do this. And then once you get into the training, like what makes good Olympic athletes is people that can balance like I want to compete, I want to win, but I'm also willing to do the really monotonous training and
practice,
which is
practice,
which you did when
practice,
John wanted to climb.
practice.
What is it, Mount Vaughn?
Mount Vaughn 2
Yep.
on my bike.
And in order to do it, so you can do it.
Yep.
I remember the training you were doing every
hill
day.
repeats, and that's actually leading to an interesting question that Tim had posed a while ago when we were talking about having you on. By the way, we're joined by Andrew Bolton, who's the VP of Brand Partnerships at Knotch. You
John likes the name Knotch.
Well,
It's a good
I want to
name,
say the
Knotch.
K, but I can't.
I know.
It's Knotch. Knotch.
Everything's got to be quirky in tech world.
Given the fact that competing at the levels you've competed at would basically be viewed by many as a job because of the amount of the repetitive training that has to happen for you to have a star event. You got to lead all up to that. How are you able to, and how's anybody doing this? Either they're doing it full time, or do they have a job that understands, or like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's one that is a struggle for a lot of Olympic athletes. Like I always say that I spent my 20s as a professional yet highly underpaid athlete, because that's really the time that you're putting in your training between 4 to 6 hours a day, pretty much every day, and maybe a little bit less on Saturday and Sunday, but you're still doing something, which is kind of crazy, but fun at the same time. But as far as funding goes and like how do you live and survive, it is, at least for the sports that are not like the premier sports like swimming, track and field, where there's roads for sponsorship and outside funding that way. The stipend that you get from the U.S. Olympic Committee is a couple $100 a month. You get health insurance maybe if you're lucky.
that's maybe buying you a couple of Cliff Bars.
Yeah,
which you might not be allowed to eat. But
yeah, luckily you just write everything off as a deduction on your taxes, which is kind of funny, because you're.
Do they pay for your housing or lodging?
No. So we ended up basically living. It was almost like a fraternity house with like 6 other guys in a pretty small house. And it's fun and it's interesting. And you're kind of like scraping to get by. But a lot of people then also like get a little extra income through either picking up odd jobs. I kind of made the conscious decision that I wanted to find some sort of a job that I could do between training practices, and so I ended up doing like inside sales, so just sitting on a phone or sitting in front of the computer.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
What were you selling?
So at the time, I was just really glamorous. It was training programs for people who worked in the energy sector, which is
Training programs for.
yeah.
hello,
So, like,
this is Andrew. Do you know how to shut down your nuclear reactor?
Yeah, it's stuff
There's
like that.
a button called control rods. We're going to train you on that. And meanwhile, you're half asleep.
You see that
because
temperature
you
gauge, you're
just,
gonna wanna-
You just did. And guys, for both of you, because you both row, I know for me in cycling, the hardest lesson I had to learn was that most of your training does not happen on the bike. It happens in the gym. It's like resistance training, strength training, endurance training. And you have to put in your miles in the saddle, but you have to do a lot of gym work, right?
A lot of running.
Yeah.
Really?
I didn't like.
I think it depends. Yeah, it really depends on like the coach and the training program that you're in and whatnot. Like at Marietta, it was a little bit of everything. So time in the boat, time in the rowing machine, time in the gym, time running, and it was a good combination. And like a good coach will tweak that training program.
Yeah.
Like if they've got people that need to lose a few pounds, maybe you're doing a lot more running and you're doing a lot more on the
I
bike.
was running.
There you go. Or maybe
No, tater tots. One of my favorite college
if you
staples.
need more more power, then it's more time in the gym, and it's a balancing act of the time. Once you get to the national team level, a lot of it is just time in the boat and time on the rowing machine. Probably 80% of your training time is in the boat
time.
Or
yeah, well, that's a skill thing
training.
too.
Yeah, for sure.
So who would be providing the boats?
So at the national team level, there is U.S.
And did you
rowing,
guys
which is-
choose? What is it? 6, 8? Like how many?
So there's different, there's you can row in a single, you can row in a pair, a 4, or an 8, and then there's a few other like little permutations and changes off of that. But that's the main setup. In the U.S., like for college, the 8 is like the premier event. Internationally, it's still respected, but like all the other boat classes can be really competitive as well. And so over the years, the U.S. has been really dominant in the 8 because that's what people are used to rowing, and like smaller boats take a little bit more skill, takes a little bit more time, and you're going up against Europeans that have been rowing since they were 12 years old.
Same as cycling.
Exactly.
They're born with bikes. You're like, okay.
Their skill set is just different. They have a little bit more touch and feel.
So did any of the so when you finished rowing, are you rowing now still?
Yeah, I haven't been in a boat in 3 or 4 years.
Do you miss it?
Here and there, there's definitely times where I'm kind of like, it would be nice to just go out and like go for a nice relaxing row. But then you also remember like you become a very like fair weather rower, and then you're just like, oh man, it's just a little bit too windy out there right now, or like the temperature's just a little bit off. And
if you don't do it, it's not fun.
What did your coach used to say? It
doesn't rain on the river.
Yep.
I haven't been in a boat for 2 years either, but it's because of my leg. But and if you're out of shape, which I also am, it's not fun by any means. It's a long day, a long row.
A lot of blisters. It's just it's not good.
But you're still exercising now. You're doing cycling now, though, right?
A little bit of cycling, yeah. I mean, work takes up a lot more time. Just had a baby a few months ago too, so that takes up more time now. So, working out time and other time is beginning to.
That all goes out the window.
Did your wife row?
She did. She rowed in high school, and she rowed on a club team in college. Okay.
So then you come off the high of being a.
What'd you go to school?
A top athlete.
International business.
Is that what you majored in?
Business.
International business.
Yeah. Minor in Asian studies, just because.
Can you speak any?
No.
Anything?
Ni hao.
Can you speak anything Asian?
Ni hao.
We learned Chinese.
You were in China. Didn't you know anything? Did they give you a quick?
Ni hao and xie and.
Tim put the discs, and we were going to learn from Marietta to
St. Louis. We were going to be fluent. At least, or no, enough to. We were going to be conversant. We were going to go to the Chinese restaurant and order out.
It almost put me to sleep. I almost drove off the road. But
we ended up getting a pizza that night.
I did learn ni hao.
Ni hao. That's it. Yeah.
So after you come off all that, you're now starting a career late.
Yeah.
Compared to.
I didn't have a real job until I was 28, 29, I guess is probably the best way.
So how'd you go about doing that? And what fields did you go into?
Yeah, actually kind of an interesting story. So towards the end of the summer leading up to the games, I started just kind of applying to jobs and trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. Like we were living in Princeton, New Jersey, because that's where the training center is, and so there's a lot of different companies and corporations down there. And I ended up interviewing, getting a job at this company that does human resource personality assessments. So it's actually it's pretty fascinating because it takes like, oh, you're going to be good at sales, but you're going to be really good at this specific type or like specific day to day. So it kind of takes your personality traits into account and like matches you with what you should be doing.
Okay.
And so corporations will use it as part of their interview process to see like, okay, is this person going to work within the contract?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was interesting. And so I started working there directly, like probably 2 weeks after I got back from the Olympics. I'm like, okay, real job, real life, I'm doing it. And that was September of 2008. October of 2008, I don't know if you guys remember, but the stock market had like a little bit of a blip, let's call it, slight correction. And all of a sudden, no one was hiring people anymore. And so the company I worked for pretty much laid off 50% of its workforce.
It's almost like it's almost like you graduated college into the biggest recession, which was almost the Depression. It's almost like you could have snipped all that time out and gone back to school.
Well, actually, though, part of the reason why I kept rowing after college was because I graduated in 2002, which is right after in a recession, right after the .com, right after September 11th, and it was like, I just keep rowing, and so I was like, great, it's going to happen again, and so got laid off. It was actually probably the best thing that ever happened to me, and then I ended up connecting with a friend of mine who was head of product at a really small tech startup, advertising technology startup in Princeton, and they were going to market. They're like, well, like, we don't have anyone doing sales. Think you could be good at it. We don't have any money to pay you, and I'm like, I'm used to not getting paid.
I lived in a house with 6 guys.
Yeah, exactly. I still was.
We had one box of cornflakes.
And so I ended up doing that, and it was a pretty awesome 2.5 year crash course in all things advertising, marketing, digital, and kind of making it up as we go along. And that's kind of got into the field that I'm in now.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Knotch is a cool company, right?
I think it's pretty cool, yeah. So far, so good.
So when you're VP of brand partnerships, and what is the product that Knotch is primarily selling?
So VP of brand partnerships, first off, is a fancy name for sales because no one likes to actually call it sales anymore. Apparently.
Our sales guy's the same thing. Yeah. He just became the SVP of, I don't know.
Was he president of brand?
President brand.
Yeah,
marketing.
you got to like soften it a little bit, I think. Just soften it a little bit. I think people just see through the BS. I don't really know. But yeah, Knotch is interesting. I've been there for about a month now, so it's actually relatively new. It's a small team. We've only got about 10 people, so it's a nice small company. But we are lucky enough to work with like GE and Unilever globally, which is awesome.
So it sounds more like you're on the client side as opposed to the agency side?
Yeah, so we're working mostly directly with brands, and what we're helping them do is measure the effectiveness of the content that they're creating. So, like as you probably see in the marketing world these days, everything is moving more towards brand storytelling, branded content, collaborations with publishers and influencers and stuff like that, which I think is good and beneficial.
We're in that wheelhouse right now. Volkswagen is one of our big
Exactly.
partners.
So
We
Yeah.
drive the vehicle. We talk about it. It's organic because we're both car guys.
Yep.
And I think our audience knows that. We always say we've come up through cars, so for us to talk about it makes sense. But you're helping them optimize their storytelling or optimize their delivery.
A little bit of both. So essentially, with all this content that's being created, whether it's content that's on a brand's website or if it's content that they're creating through a publisher collaboration or collaboration such as you guys, it's really hard to measure the effectiveness because you deal with a lot of disparate data sets. So
Yeah.
each publisher reports how people are engaging with that content different ways, and so there's no apples to apples comparison. And then furthermore, to do things like a brand lift study or to really understand like the emotion that the content's creating, you'd have to do like a Nielsen or Millward Brown study that takes 2 months to get back, which in this day and age is
A long time.
an eternity.
For the digital side, yeah.
Exactly. And so essentially what we've done is created a way to get all of that data in real time and make it kind of an apples to apples comparison. So we can work with our clients and tell them, what regions content's performing better in and, eliciting the emotions that they want versus the emotions that they don't want, so they can optimize their media spend, they can inform their longer term content strategy, things like that.
So,
Yeah.
you're talking about BS.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me an example? I read all the time about this stuff.
Yeah.
So can you give me a real world example of how it works?
I'll set it up for you. Dow Chemical is one of your clients, and they have a partnership with Martha Stewart and Real Simple.
Mm-hmm.
Both create little web videos and tips for how to use antibacterial
Whatever it is.
wipes or whatever it is. That's the setup. So Dow says, okay, Knotch, tell us what is working and where it's working.
Right. So
Is that right?
Is that right?
Is my setup?
Yeah, your setup's right. So if you're working with two different
Got a job, Nash.
Yeah, exactly. Sold.
Keep me in mind.
I am
Keep me in mind.
hiring. So desperately. No. So yeah. So if you're working with these two different places, Real Soap
Custom
and Martha
publishing,
Stewart,
yeah.
they're creating this content. They're putting it out on their site. They're promoting it on social and things like that. We can very quickly say, okay, not only is the content that Real Simple is more effective than Martha Stewart, but that we can also say Martha Stewart's content is effective in these specific regions, but it's not effective in these other regions. And
Can you say could you go beyond region and say in these people?
you can look at
you go
broader demographic type categories. So I'll give you a really kind of messed up.
So the agencies hate you.
No, because we're actually helping them make them a little bit better as well. Because, for instance, one of our clients, big CPG company, they were creating content with Vice, right? And the content was about women's empowerment. And they put this content out there.
Like a Vice thing to me.
Well, it was on Broadly, which is like one of their
Okay,
properties.
all right.
It's like longer form content, right?
Yep.
And so that content went live, and within 24 hours, and this is so messed up, you could basically overlay positive and negative sentiment with the political map. So you could very quickly see that in specific regions, that content was playing very poorly, and in other regions, it was playing very positively. And so within 48 hours, they were able to then work with their media agency and say, okay, let's not promote the content in the areas where it's not working, and let's shift and put more money behind where it is working. And so from a brand's perspective, that's great because you're spending money on the content. You don't want it having a negative effect on your brand perception. You want to have it have a positive effect and a positive emotion. And so that's kind of an example.
What I always find odd about all of this in general, it's the same thing with people who self-select media and say, I'm going to get my news from A, B, or C.
I got to use Facebook and Twitter for my news. Yeah.
Right, is that in some cases I think it might be important for you, when you used to the old way of reading a newspaper.
Random.
You found something that you probably weren't either expecting to find, or the randomness of learning something that maybe you didn't expect you were going to learn. And a lot of times with the way this marketing is going with digital is they've refined it so much to say, oh, people in Alabama aren't interested in what we're saying here, so we're not even going to expose them to it.
Yeah.
Whereas it might, I mean, could you make an argument the other way and say, you know, perhaps you should, or is it just everybody's slavishly after the dollar and efficiency?
I mean, a little bit of both. Like everyone is under, after the dollar and efficiency, and I think when they're doing spends that way, but I think also like thinking about taking that data and thinking about longer term strategy, like maybe it's, okay, we've seen this type of content, doesn't work well with a specific demographic or in a specific region. That should inform your strategy moving forward of like, okay, how do we make content that's going to resonate more there? I was talking to another brand just the other day, and they were talking about, we're afraid that we're making advertising and marketing for people that live in New York, Chicago, and LA, right?
Yeah, the bubble cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But our product, we know our consumer is
yeah.
in Iowa and Idaho and all these Midwest countries. Geez, states
Could be
countries.
Could be.
I don't know. Texas could be a separate country.
They want us to see.
All these Midwest states. That's where the bulk of their sales are. Like, how do we make sure that the marketing that we're creating in our New York bubble or our LA bubble resonates with the people in those regions? I think that's an interesting powerful way of giving consumers like a feedback mechanism too. Like, have them tell the advertiser what they like and don't like.
I guess to Tim's question before, and while you were answering and he was asking the question, I guess what it would be is Andrew could basically say to you via Knotch, yeah, the folks in this state really aren't your target, but they could give you a reason to either keep running the content there, because you might say, you know what, someone's going to randomly find us, but they could give you a reason to adjust the spend or to adjust the matrix a bit and say, okay, yeah, you're right, you might find a couple people, but do it in relation to the scale.
So it's directional and keeps you informed, similar to research that might take you a few months to get.
Yeah, it's more
real time.
It is real time, and from a media perspective, because of digital, everything has to be at that.
Can you measure us?
Well, that was going to be my next question. All right, so I had dinner the other night with a friend of mine who works for Marriott, and he's in their social team.
You can make an intro for me. That'd be great.
I can.
It's always selling. Yeah.
And
we get commission.
Of course. Steak dinner or something.
And money. Steak dinner don't pay the rent.
He'd be fine with a steak dinner and a martini. So
fine.
Making deals on air, Nash.
But he was asking about our show, and I said, and he said, before you answer the question, he goes, what data are you looking at?
Yeah.
Because there are several pools, and it's all screwed up.
Yeah.
So let's say we're on YouTube, and we share the show through Facebook. Well, Facebook has their own video stuff, so they don't like having the data go back to you. So it's all over the place. So I said, one metric that intrigues me is the number of minutes consumed video-wise and the average retention rate, or how long someone stays on board. So I said our average viewer watches the show for 27 to 34 minutes. And he goes, stop right there. He goes, that's an incredible engagement number. He goes, that's a story.
Yep.
He said, I don't care if that's 10 people or 1,000, because that's a long time. And that's different than what we're talking about. Well, maybe.
I mean, I think it's time spent with content is definitely one indicator that someone has a positive emotion towards that content, but there's a whole host of other metrics that you could start looking at. So talking about could we measure you guys? One interesting barrier is social. So social doesn't allow for any real third-party verification of their data.
Yep.
They're basically just grading their own homework over and over and over again.
Grading their own homework?
Yeah, if you think about it, right? That's I wrote a report and then I gave myself an A. Look how good this report is.
Facebook. That's Facebook. Right?
Exactly.
So I've got 10
there are no external parties that could look at that data.
They are all they can get access to the data, but is this still the data that's being provided by
Facebook?
Facebook?
By a social platform.
Exactly.
Nash will be using that, grading your own homework.
Yeah.
I'm filing that one away for the sponsors.
That's fine.
Because, I'm sure you hit this too in any sales position or relationship building
Partnershiping.
Brand partnership. Someone always throws a number up. Numbers seem to be a great way of avoiding a conversation and or negating a step forward. Like, well, you can give me this, but I need that. They're like, well, I don't do that now. Okay, well, come back when you do. You get a lot of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. we work with a lot of different types of companies, a lot of different types of products, and everyone has very different needs. But there are some like core tenets that are cross among them. Part of the thing that's interesting for me and why I like sales or partnerships is dealing with a lot of different types of companies. So there's some jobs where you only work with like just finance or like just
siloed.
exactly.
This is your thing.
We're pretty broad. Like we work B2B, we work B2C, we work across different categories. Anyone who's creating content, which is pretty much everyone now, and that keeps it much more like intellectually stimulating. And those questions that people come up with, you have to like listen to it, process it, and like figure out like, well, what's the root cause? Like, why are they asking that question?
Yeah.
Is it because they're trained to ask that question, or is that the answer that is going to make them look better to their boss? There's a lot of like sleuthing that kind of goes on.
I frankly think some of the most fun stuff is done in the B2B sector.
It's interesting.
I mean, I picked up a magazine the other day and most of the advertising would be what I would consider B2B. It was tools. It was John Deere was all over this thing, but it was not John Deere consumer product. It was like a level above, like construction site stuff and everything. And they were well done ads and everything. But I thought, wow, that's a whole thing I know nothing about. I mean, I know about it, but it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely a different field, for sure. Like I said earlier, like we work with GE, and obviously they're huge.
They're very B2B.
Very B2B. But they also have a bit of a consumer voice as well. I mean, they have some really pretty good TV ads and things like that are definitely geared just like engaging consumers in general and just overall kind of brand lift. But things like their GE reports, which are across multiple languages, global. It's all thought leadership, and it's about how do you make your hopeful clients and consumers smarter by through good content, which is why I like this whole idea of like branded content. I think is really great because it's getting back to that again emotional connection to a brand as opposed to like let's create some display advertising and stuff like that. Like let's create something that's actually has utility for.
So what happens
consumer.
when we move away from the death of the 30-second TV spot's been predicted for years, right?
Right.
But what happens when we move further away from that, when people can snip it out, time shift it, et cetera, and entertainment becomes branded content? We're already doing it now, right? But do you actually measure that kind of thing? Like let's say like TBS does a half-hour comedy, and GE decides that they're going to own that somehow.
Sponsor it,
yeah. I don't know how they get in there or what product. The jet engine shows up on someone. Oh, my dad, the jet engine, whatever. They're a bad example. But would they actually use Knotch to measure that kind of thing too then?
Not right now, but definitely I think in the future as that becomes more prevalent for sure. I mean, we're already talking to people who are working in like the VR space of how do
I've
you.
heard this come up a lot lately.
So we were just in Cannes, France for the big advertising festival there, and the three biggest themes were one was ad blocking and online ad blocking and. Basically, marketers saying like we did this to ourselves by creating really bad consumer
and banners,
consumer experiences. Like, of course, they're going to like rebel back against that. So that was the negative, and the positive was branded content. Like, how do we provide value and utility to consumers? And then VR, kind of another like 3 years down the road. How do we create experiences that are interesting and engaging, but also include advertising? And actually, one of my friends, he just started working at a startup out. On the West Coast, that's basically building a VR ad network. And
what's VR for people who don't know what that is?
Virtual reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, that experience is that you could do it tomorrow with your iPhone. You could get something called Google Cardboard, and it's a little kit with a lens, and it creates like a ViewMaster thing, and it's pretty cool actually. The level way above that, which is where people are really taught, that's the Oculus Rift.
Yep.
That's expensive hardware matched to a PC. Where you literally are in an immersive environment, and now they're taught they'll create an environment and then they'll create ad space for you.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. We're if you ever
On
thought,
that note, now
let's go back to
like,
ViewMaster.
What happened to print and?
Yeah, I know. It makes it sound like swallowing 3 teaspoons of water in the bay at Rio. No big deal. Don't worry about that human poop virus that's floating off.
You'll lose a few pounds. It'll be great.
One
I gotta head to Brazil.
cheese away from my goal weight. I had to head to Brazil. Yeah. Hey, we've been talking to Andrew Bolton, who's the VP of Brand Partnerships at Knotch, Knotch. Knotch, but I got Knotch. Like there's something about that K at the start of it.
It's like Knott's Berry Farm,
Yeah.
but with a such.
So, Andrew, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to
Thanks for
see
having me.
you.
Appreciate it.
Hey, it's the Focus Group with myself, John Nash, and Tim Bennett. We're going to take a quick break, so stay with us. We'll be right back for some shop talk. And then VW thing.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Now, back to the Focus Group with Tim and John.
Glamour today is nothing but a tight skirt, loose hips, and wet lips.
An entertaining look at the world of business.
Make it work. Make it work. Make it work.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We're all business except when we're not, and we had a interesting conversation there with Andrew Bolton, former Olympian, and also with a company called Knotch that John likes. You can get a job there, John. You seem to know a lot about it.
I could get a job there. I could be a sales guy.
You could be. You could
But
be.
according to our salesperson,
Start bringing in some coin.
I can't sell anything.
There's going to be that. There's going to be the search
thing, the 176 gigabytes of
I got
music
too
on
much
your
stuff
hard
on my
drive
hard
and
drive.
blow
Let
up.
me tell you something, Nash. You have a lot more on your computer than I do.
Ooh, it's all
Not
a little
music. You got other stuff. You little animation things, balls bouncing, all this business. Don't tell me about music. Anyway, you brought a shop talk in.
Well, we'll make it a quick shop talk because we're running low on time.
Right. It was about gay nightlife is dying and Grindr and gentrification are to blame. And I read this. You and I have talked about this a bunch before about kind of the demise of the gay bar.
Yeah, what'd you think of the article?
Well, I was going to ask you.
Well, first
I think it made it. I think the thing I took away was that people say, and we've all talked about this, is that the gay bars have changed, and they've either been gay people go to the same bars that straight people go to now, and there's not the individual clubs per se. But if the ultimate goal is to go out and hook up, you could be a lot more efficient now in an app. You don't need to go out and do the mingling and networking and talking and meet people. Now, I've met a lot of friends that way by just going out and. But
a lot of good friends.
But as I read this, it was essentially that if there's a lot more efficient way for you to go out and meet somebody and efficient and
the one paragraph I'll cite in here. So Tim did a good job of kind of summing this up. And by the way, this is a British perspective.
Right.
The author wrote about London clubs, but not so different from the big clubs we used to have here in New York City. And basically, the two things I would say is one thing he says here is there are more venues, gay partygoers, and different vibes on offer than ever before. But broadly speaking, the dying of the LGBTQ nightclub culture used to largely be based around dance music. So for you and I, it's a culture that fizzled with glamour, drama, and excitement in the 90s and 60s. But that scene, which once thrived at club nights like Trade, and here in the States at Pyramid, Heaven, New York's The Cock, Michael Alig events, which used to be like the Palladium and Limelight, that's become the stuff of legend. It was almost like that was a time period, and that was what it was, and now it's different. And then this other quote he has here is, life's changed a lot since the 90s, says Simon, a 27-year-old media planner, by way of explaining the generational shift. People are more health conscious, and there's a lot more at stake with their careers. They're climbing the ladder, and places like New York City and London are too expensive to be out for 3-day parties and going out to these clubs. So it was almost as if to say, it's not a time to party.
Well, I agreed with it's expensive. I thought he was BS about, people are more health conscious.
Yeah.
Really? Have you been to one of these messy gay clubs where everybody's doing drugs,
Yeah.
health conscious? And there's a lot more at stake with their careers.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. No more than when we were out in the 80s. I
No,
did.
so, but the
Back in the day.
But they concluded by saying that the scene is an eroded idea. Gay men are still having a good time, and for a younger generation without the benefit or detriment of hindsight, who don't remember how things were, gay nightlife is certainly not want for excitement. So they basically he wraps it up by saying our perception of the dying nightlife and the gentrification and Grindr killing it off is generational, as opposed to if we were in our 20s, we would just be experiencing a different kind of going out and having
I miss the old clubs.
well,
Not that I would be going out to them, but I do miss.
there was something really cool about getting picked when you're at the door of the Limelight or at the Palladium. I remember the night that I got us into the Palladium, the guy that was standing on this box, like, you and your friends can come in. I mean, like,
your hair all poofed up.
I had my
blonde
hair. I looked like Jay Gatsby.
Yeah.
And I hear the peanut gallery laugh, and I look like Jay. In my head, I look like Jay Gatsby. Okay,
but I'll use to put a final point on it though. I go down to Rehoboth a bit, which is a big LGBT destination.
Much bigger.
You and I and Pete have gone. We're in P-Town last year. Other people we know go to P-Town. I don't think it's the same, and I miss that. Now, I don't know if it's an age thing, but I do think that the bars are different, and I think the scene, the social scene is different. Maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but I do notice Rehoboth is a good example. There's certainly not the amount of people going out. Things are a lot more expensive than they used to be, and the options are not as.
And you nailed it, Tim. You nailed it perfectly, as you usually do. I was out at dinner the other night with a friend, and there were two guys on a date 2 tables down from us. They barely spoke to each other. Their iPhone Plus, the bigger iPhone, both of them had them face up, and every time that thing lit up, they would stop what they were doing. And I thought, wow, no one's getting laid tonight unless you're having sex with your phone, which I
you tap on the app.
All right, so that's the show for today, folks. We want to thank you for joining us. FocusGroupRadio.com is the place to find all the information for finding us on every platform. Subscribe, like, and rate. And a big, big thank you to our partner here, Volkswagen Group of America. Tim and I are shortly going to be taking a new car, which we're very interested in, called the All-Track. It's a Golf wagon with all-wheel drive, which Tim and I broke our teeth on when...
The Outback Killer.
Outback Killer. Kill the Outback. So thank you to VW. So, hey, thanks for joining us again. Tune in next week. Find us on all the platforms and have a good one.
Join the focus group on all forms of social media. It's easy. And like good marketers, our branding is uniform across all platforms. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope at Focus Group Radio. Again, join the conversation across all of our social media platforms at Focus Group Radio.